Jai Kunja Bihari. Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Jai Girivaradhari. Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Jai Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Jai Brajajanarandana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jai Gopi Janaranjana. Jamna Shira Mahachari Kunja Bihari. Yamuna Shira Mahachari Kunja Bihari. Jayo Jamuna Tiravanachari Kunja Bihari. Jai Kunja Bihari. Jai Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jai Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Rajadana Jai Gopi Radhe Jayo Jayo Madhava Daite
Radhe Jayo Madhava Daite
Gokutarune Manda Mohite Radhe Jayo Jayo Madhava Daite
Radhe Jayo
Rishabhanudadhi Navasasiveke Lalita Madhava Daite Goku Taruni Manda Radhe Sham ki jai. Shri Radhastami Mahamotsav ki jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Ajunalambita Bhujo Kanagavadatu Sankirtanayaka Pitaro Kamalaya Takshu Vishwambaro Dvijabaro Yuga Palo Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karunavataro Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityanando Sahodito Gorodai Pushpavantu Chitro Sando Tumuno Vandeham Shri Ramakrishna Abhaya Charanasako Sukodo Paramanando Sundaro Sugala Priyo He Krishna Karuna Dinabandhu Jagatate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namaste Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Krishnanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Pranamami Hari Priye Radhe Vrindavaneshwari. Shri Radhastami ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premanand Hari. So we gathered on the auspicious occasion of Radhastami. Welcome everyone. And we spoke last night to some extent about Sri Radha and about the nature of Leela and the Leela narratives and how we can take advantage of them, appreciate them, and in the context of that, we recited the narrative of Gayatri, Gayatri Vasurupo, so as it's mentioned. Bhagavatam is a commentary on the Gayatri mantra, beginning, ending, in the middle, of course. The word Dhimahi, central to the Gayatri prototype of all mantras, is invoked. And so we heard of Gayatri's position as a gopi and of the subsequent, after her marriage to Brahma, manifestation of what's called Kam Gayatri, which is the fullest reach then of the Brahma Gayatri, and is central to the entirety of the central to the center of the Braj Leela, corresponding with the fifth note on the scale of Indian Raga, Pa, Panchama, fifth. Nard presides over this note. Nard, of course, is the author of the Bhakti Sutras that Rupa Goswami drew from in coming up with his own definition of bhakti. His definition or defining verse is that verse out of which the entirety of his tome, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, expands. Nard's verse is I'm sorry if I screwed this verse. Nard's verse is Sarvo Parivanir Muktam Tat Paratubena Nirmalam Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchite. And drawing on this verse, Rupa fashioned his own and developed the idea a little bit from Nard's sutras. Anyabhilashita sunyam gyan karmadi anabritam anukulena krishnanushivanam bhakti rutam. The definition of uttam bhakti, and I'm not going to go into that at length here, but suffice to say that as Narad presides, presiding deity over the fifth note, and Sri Rupa is taken from Narad to develop his definition, unfolding an explanation of the significance of bhakti, the nature of bhakti, its furthest reach, and so on and so forth. That comes to Radhastami, service of Radha. This is what Gaudiya Vaishnavism is centered on as a lineage. There are various lineages of following the Vedanta, schools of Vedanta. And they have practices, they have an underlying foundation, a philosophical foundation, and they lead to a particular attainment. They're different, differentiated by their attainment and, of course, the corresponding approach, different attainment. It's all a transcendental attainment, but varied nonetheless. So the ideal of the Gaudiya lineage is centered on attainment of Braj Bhakti and connection with the service of Sri Radha. Primarily in two forms, but primarily in one, in direct service as a handmaiden of Radha. This is the position of Sri Rupa Goswami. Again, the author of Bhakti-Rasamrita Sindhu and its sequel, Ujjwal Nilmani, very important books to the Gaudiyas. These books, as I mentioned last night, and all of the other books of our Gaudiya Acharyas that are together what we call a Bhakti Shastra, are all derived from the Bhagavad, Srimad Bhagavatam, that the Vrindavan Goswamis see the Bhagavad, that is, as the central hub around which all the sacred texts revolve and are understood in relation to. It's brought out very nicely in Jiva Goswami's Tattva Sandarbha, the central position of Bhagavad to the afterthought, or rather the mature reflection on all that he had written, and that under the tutelage of Narad, Vyas, that is, all that he had written, under the tutelage of Narad, his guru, he wrote the Bhagavad. It's a longhand explanation of the shorthand that constitutes the first form in human society of theology, or making sense out of revelation in the form of the sutras, which are like codes, or you call it aphorisms, or notes on yellow paper or something like that. Stretching it out, then playing it out, drawing it out. This is what he's done in his final word, in his maturity. Samadhi nanusmrata vichestitam. He was told by Narad, you are mature, enter into samadhi, and do justice to what you have written by showing what all of it really is pointing to in no uncertain terms. This is Srimad Bhagavatam, and careful study of that brings us, as I say, to the service of Radha. It is, after all, the Bhagavad Purana, but its other name is Srimad Bhagavatam. We don't find the Srimad Kurma Purana, the Srimad Brahma Purana, the Srimad Shiva Purana. They're all the Shiva Purana, Brahma Purana, this Purana, Kurma Purana, that Purana, and then Bhagavad Purana, but it has a second name, and that second name is also found in the other Puranas that do glorify it in so many ways, pointing to its central position. And that other name is Srimad Bhagavatam. The Bhagavad means God, and the God of the book, of course, is Krishna. And Sri means beautiful, and Sri means Radha, next to whom Krishna is more beautiful than otherwise. So, drawing on the Bhagavatam in terms of its being a commentary on Gayatri, last night, and we explained the Gaudiya understanding of Gayatri, and how the Brahma Gayatri turned into, at least from the legal narrative, into the Kam Gayatri. Kam means desire, but Kam Gayatri, Gayatri, Ganatrayate, means a song of deliverance, and it's a song of deliverance from kama, and kama means desire. It means really material desire. Often it's equated with or translated as lust. The kind of reflection, if you will, of love, which is in a reflection, everything's turned around backwards. So the Bhagavatam is the central piece. The Rasa Lila is also nicknamed Kam Vijay, victory over Kam, in a very comprehensive way, because the mundane Cupid, you may know that according to the sacred lore, Shiva was absorbed in meditation, dressed as he is in ashes. He had something to attain, no thing, so to speak, but something. Anyway, that thing called consciousness, that's not a thing. It's hard to talk about, right? And there's nothing to compare it to in the world. We define things by way of comparing them to other things. It's not like anything, but he was interested in this. So he's naked, he's dressed in ashes only. He's not interested in any things. He's interested in what himself that lies beyond things and thought. And in his meditation, someone has very much to do with things and little to do with thought, called Kam, or Cupid. He has much to do with things and little to do with thought, unfortunately. He came to distract Cupid, or excuse me, Shiva, from his meditation with his arrows. I know he's in Europe, he's depicted like that with arrows. I believe in India.
Flower arrows.
Yeah, flower arrows. It's interesting that the two both depict him as such. Of course, much of Western thought comes from Greece, and Greece is not that far from India. And there is, as we know, there was a prominent connection between Greeks and the Hindus. That Neoplatonism is basically Advaita Vedanta. It was popular at one time. So Cupid came to distract Shiva, and of course he was not about to be distracted, but he did become angry. And so he opened his eyes, having had his meditation broken, and he burned the body of Cupid. Since then, Cupid has been called Ananga. Anga means body. Ananga means without a body. He became, the point is, more dangerous now. Now he's invisible. He's still there. You can kill the body, but not the soul. So the soul of Cupid lives on. And he's a very dangerous fellow, potentially very distracting, and causes not to think very, very well, to be well thought out. And of course, the point here is with regard to Shiva that his efforts to stave off the influence of desire and so forth were not comprehensive, because Cupid lived on. Maybe he didn't live on in the life of Shiva himself, but he lives on nonetheless. Whereas Krishna's Leela is quite different than that of Lord Shiva. Indeed, he's found in the central piece of the Bhagavatam, Ras Panchadhyaya, the 5 chapters of his, which constitute the consummation of his a love affair that's been building up for a number of 28 chapters in the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam. And so at this point, he plays his flute, the 5th note, Kam Gayatri, the gopis hear that and they leave everything. They had very good reason not to leave anything. family responsibilities, milk boiling on the stove, in some cases, babies crying, and so they just left it all. They had 1,008 reasons not to leave. They didn't listen to one of them. If we get one reason not to come to the temple, we'll take it. That's the difference. They went. They heard the flute, they heard their names. Each one, they went. And neither one waited to see if anybody else was going to go either. There was no, but if anybody else is gone, we would have strength in numbers. Not like that. But when they arrived, all of them, then they found a good group, right, of persons of the same character, high character, to hear the call of the absolute, the clarion call, flute sound of Krishna, and go without any hesitation. And there, of course, he tested their resolve, and on the grounds, on the basis of karma and gyan, or religious sensibilities in an ordinary sense, and on spiritual sensibilities in terms of knowledge of this Atma. He reasoned with them why they shouldn't be there in the dead of the night. Gave good reasons from Dharma and Gyan, from karma and Gyan. But they responded in such a way as to defeat all of his suggestions as to why they should not be there, and show themselves to be anya vilashita sunyam gyan karmadi and avritam. They had bhakti uncovered by gyan and karma. Anukulena Krishnanushilanam Bhaktirutam Uttam Bhakti. And so the setting is one that is a no-brainer for Cupid. When Cupid approached Shiva, well, that, it's a hard sell there to distract this guy from meditation and so forth. But Krishna's in the autumn harvest moonlight of the full moon, very auspicious time in the forest, in the middle of the night, and surrounded by beautiful milk maidens. So like Cupid think, why even bother to go there? It's already done, so to speak. But of course he did go, but the Leela is nicknamed, as I say, Kam Vijay, because as it turns out, Krishna was Cupid was defeated by way of what has been celebrated as he who has been celebrated as the transcendental Cupid, Madan Mohan. Madan is a name for Cupid. Mohan means who bewilders. So who bewilders Cupid in the way in which Cupid likes to bewilder us and make us not think very deeply, do something rash. Krishna, Pushpavanaya Dhimahi, he has his arrows of Pushpa flower arrows, and he's called Pushpavanaya. It's another name for Govinda. So anyway, he defeats Cupid. Cupid becomes powerless and loses his own capacity to think and act in the presence of the Madan Mohan, you call the bewilderer of Cupid, the transcendental Cupid, whose love affair has the power to do away with Cupid's influence. In a sense, something like if we were to compare Shiva's efforts to digging a big hole and throwing all of our desires in it and then covering it up. Compare that to putting all your desires in a hole, covering it up, and building a temple on top of it, and doing kirtan, something like that. It'll never come up again. Nothing will ever come up from that hole. We could throw our desires in there, which are like bamboo. They grow very fast. Throw them in there, and suddenly they find a way to start shooting up again. If we try to ignore them, or by the strength of knowledge alone, we say, Desire is a problem. Desire in relation to mundane objects, this is a problem. It's the womb from which suffering is born. I'm attached to them, and I can't keep them, and they don't turn out to be, when fulfilled, all that I thought they would be. It was not good, clear thinking on my part. So to think that out and decide, I will give up desire. I will sit and look at a white wall for 8 hours a day. This is a questionable practice from our perspective. Shiva exemplifies the fact that this is not only difficult, but there's many examples in the Bhagavatam that the results of such will not be forthcoming. The desired result, Subari Muni was is another prominent example. He was fasting and meditating underwater. Pretty good feat. I met a guy the other day, and he had written a book, he told me, and his book was about water meditation. And he had invented something where you can sit in the water and meditate. And the picture on his book was with a lady on one side and a man on the other. Her heels were on his shoulders and vice versa. And they were laying on this thing, quote unquote, meditating in the water. The idea being that in his mind that meditation meant to be completely relaxed. Just lying there, no effort. And well, Subari was underwater meditating. That would not be too relaxing, but this is the state that which meditation is supposed to bring you into. Right? It's a reversal, if you will, of our energy that's spent, by and large, in pursuit of sense objects, which results in a life that seems dependent upon those objects. So our being is dependent upon having and defined by our having. What we have is what we are. Our desires try to define us. Our sense of my defines our sense of I. So this is material life. So meditation is about reversing that. Because that identity is as well here today and gone tomorrow as the things that we think are ours, which time shows us time and again that they are not ours. We don't own anything. And an I derived from a sense of false proprietorship is a false I. So it's not something you can rely upon. And so meditation is for finding the I. It's for reversing this and turning the energy spent towards or projected towards sense objects, turning that inward. And so you can live underwater. You have the implication is of the story in the Bhagavad. The implication is that you can have a life beyond a sense of life derived from having. So again, the sense of being that is derived from having is very, very meager. To be, to have, what is his name? He was a psychologist some time ago, wrote the book. I can't remember. To be, to have. To be, to have, or to love. Eric Fromm. To be or to have. He looked at it from a psychological point of view. He made some good points, but from a metaphysical point of view, I'm speaking. To be, to have, or to love. So Shiva was about being, and the Karma Marg is about having. Subari Muni was about being. And so we can be or exist in a more substantial sense by foregoing the having or the taking, the acquiring, the pursuit, the acquisition of things. But he was being underwater, and that's the implication. He existed without things. But nonetheless, he got distracted by the intercourse of a couple of fish. So the point is that this is a very maitunya bhavam. It's very powerful. Striya, what is it? Strio. No. Strio. Anyway, strio means woman, man, the combination, maitunya bhava. It's very powerful. It's maitunya bhava means like to be like, it means like to be under the, like the old-fashioned ball and chain they put the criminals under, something like that. It's very binding force, the attraction. It's, it makes the world, obviously, in one sense, go around. It keeps it going. And they say, well, if everybody meditates, then what? If everybody just a meditator and a monk, then what? There'll be no more people in the world. What a loss. After all, as the Bible says, if you gain the whole world, but lose your atma, then you gain nothing. And don't worry, it won't go away. Even the meditators have difficulty with it, and the Subhari Muni is the example. So he lost his focus, something like that. It's another example of interplay of Cupid, not even directly attacking him, but indirectly, and he saw and became distracted from his meditative life, and the story goes on. So, but there are many stories like this in the Bhagavatam to illustrate the point. But as I said, to be, to have, or to love. So to love is to be and to have also. There's some having and being in loving. You have to have another, for example. To be without having is to be alone. But to be in the context of loving is to have a significant other and a number of considerable variety, if you will, that is part of love. As we heard with regard to the Bhagavat, Rasa Lila last night, there's one Krishna, but there are many Radhas. All the gopis in Nitya Lila, they are all expansions of Radha. And for rasa, in order for rasa to be full and reach its height, it requires many. So Krishna is the center, and Radha expands herself. Every emotional, nuanced aspect of her being is personified as another gopi, and then this one, when it's appropriate, the best thing for pleasing Krishna's senses, that gopi is sent. And Radha will take her there. You go, you go. And when no one else can fully satisfy him, then she presents herself and so forth. So many Radhas, and in every devotee there is a little Radha. She is Bhakti Devi. So in Rasa Lila, then calm is defeated. Being and having are harmonized by loving. If we simply try to have, we won't be. If we simply try to be, we won't have. That might sound good, not having and just being, but it's not, it doesn't speak to our, it says that our human condition doesn't tell us much about what we are. Because our human condition dictates to us by our everyday experience that we want to be and have, and we want to love also. So in order to be without having, and be unto itself without loving, well then just to exist, as I often say, what's better, more desirable, to love to exist or to exist to love? Bhakti, of course, is the latter idea. And so if you take karma, or taking, acquiring, and gyan, knowledge or renunciation, they're like two tributaries that have their beginning in the Himalayas, but they're not powerful enough to reach the Bay of Bengal unto themselves. But if somehow they manage to connect with the flow of the Ganges, then they'll arrive there. and have meaning and be beautiful. That means the Ganges in this example is bhakti. She will reach the Bay of Bengal, and within her, karma and gyan, that unto themselves really are the two sides of the coin the material life is all about, because we seek to have, and then we seek to get rid of what we have. We call it bhoga and tyag. I want to acquire, and I want to, give it up because it's not what it turned out to be. So we just go back and forth between these two, the two tracks, if you will, on which material life runs. Bhakti comes in the middle, as we heard last night. Kam Gayatri is personified as a cow lady. She had no time for Brahma's marriage proposal. Here's a simple village cow lady who was approached by the gods with an opportunity to become of Brahma. And she rather impertinently said, "Oh, he's too old and too ugly. And he doesn't know anything about religion." He sits and does these yagyas, boring. Sometimes he meditates. She said, spiritual life is about service. It's about love, and love, if you love someone, you serve them. And I've got no time for that because I've got to milk, and then I've got to do so many things with the milk, and then I've got to clean up the cow, and then I've got to milk again, and I've got to do something with the milk. It's, if you live here, you get the idea. There's never any time, any spare time. It's a 24/7. It's a meditation on the cow to give you some experience of what eternity is. Just keeps going, keeps coming. Milking, preparing the milk, cleaning up after the cow. It's beautiful. So she was fully engaged, fully engaged in service. Love is about service. Spiritual life is about service. It's not some magical becoming invisible, walking through walls, or something. A very simple thing. Convert the enjoying and exploiting, taking ego into a serving ego. And that is best accomplished when we can find the perfect object to repose our serving propensity in. That is the idea of Krishna. So, Kam is conquered, in other words, material desire by spiritual desire. I had read that it's now a popular idea that there's a Gayatri called the Kam Gayatri. It's the Gayatri of desire. If you chant it, you can have all your desires fulfilled. Meaning of the mantra is quite the opposite, as I said. It's Kam Vijay. It's ending all desires by way of promoting healthy transcendental desires. Atmendriya priti vancha tori bole nam bole. So atmendriya, that is called Kam. Atmendriya priti vancha. Tore bole Kam, nam Kam. So Atmendriya, in this sense it means body. The pleasure of the body, which means the senses, it's constituted of, that is called Kam. And Krishnendriya priti icha. This is called prem. The difference between Kam and prem. They look similar. Because I can be fully operative with my senses, cooking, shopping, gardening, singing, dancing, all these things, but pleasure of the senses of Krishna. And this, of course, is what Radha is the personification of. She is of service. That sacrifice is but a rudimentary form of. Love is born out of from the womb of sacrifice, and when it grows up, it doesn't look like what it's like when it's born. It's similar, but it's different. Like the difference between night and well, not that different. The difference between Kam and prem is like the difference between night and day. But sacrifice is something that it requires some effort. We do it because we're supposed to do it. with calculation. It's the right thing to do. Play out to be in my immediate sensual and material interest. Still, it's the right thing to do. I'll do it. This is Ram Lila. Maryada. Very noble. Krishna Lila looks quite different. I don't know, is it noble or what's going on there? But this is the love, example of the love that's born, as I say, from the womb of sacrifice. You look a little different in the womb than you do when you're fully grown up. And so the full face of love, this is and although it may not look like that on the surface, if we look underneath, romantic encounters and love and passion for Krishna is all arising entirely out of a serving ego. There is no even interest on her part in the bliss that comes from the service, but she accepts the bliss because she knows Krishna will be pleased if she's blissful. So for that reason, all right, I'll be blissful. Something like that. So it is a serving ego that we find in the centerpiece of the Bhagavatam to the extreme, and Radha personifies it. So we discussed some of these things. We're going over it and elaborating and bringing up some other points of interest, hopefully, to our esteemed guests. But the point I'm making is that the Goswami's books are all derived from the Bhagavatam, the Grantharaj. Rupa Goswami's books, Jiva Goswami's books. So they're all really kind of developing and bringing out there these points. It is called Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad refers to Radha, who Krishna becomes more beautiful next to, so to speak. And so we need now to perhaps have some discussion as to what is the need for a Radha, because we know there's a need for God. At least some people have a need for God. I guess it would be thought like that from a psychologist. If you have a need for it, it's okay, but it's not that it really exists. So she I mean, life is metaphysical. It's not a popular word in philosophy today, but life is, you can't get away from the fact that life is more than physical. People try to make it only physical. But in doing so, they more or less deny what actual life is really all about. It's all in the subjective realm, deciding what's good or bad. That's not physical. The whole realm of morality is not physical. For example, are we going to be good humans or bad humans? Suddenly, you automatically, without thinking about it, stepped into the metaphysical, beyond the physical. And that's where we live, really. So to try to reduce all that somehow to the physical is very strained and artificial. So from our metaphysical point of view, then there must be a God, but then why a Radha? That is a good question. Why a Krishna? Okay, but why Radha? So Shri Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Mahashaya, the great Gaudiya author of Chaitanya Charitamrita, coming about just a half a generation from the original founders of the lineage, the Goswamis of Vrindavan. He has given us our arguably most important text, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. From the Gaudiya point of view, these ideas that there's a difference between the body and the self, that consciousness is different than the brain, are very boring. This book is about, which is it's a very contemporary and interesting topic. It's about what I am. What am I? It's not going to go away too soon. It's not an old theory of, subject of old books. It's a current topic, and it will be forever. What am I? Why am I? What is consciousness? And so forth. So this book is entitled Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. The Chaitanya means consciousness, and Charit means character. Amrit means Amrit, immortal. And it's often translated as nectar, like the fountain of youth, if you had found it and drunk the nectar, and thereby become immortal. It's interesting that the Europeans were looking for the fountain of youth, isn't it? And they came to the Americas, I believe. I think they thought it was in Costa Rica or something like that. They were right. That's it, but the idea is there also, drinking the nectar of the gods, so to speak, and becoming immortal in Eastern thought. So, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. It means the immortal nectar character, or the character of consciousness, the nectarian nature of character of consciousness in immortality. It's not speaking about that consciousness is different from the body. Neti, neti, neti. It's a famous Upanishadic aphorism. Not this, not that. Not this, not that. I'm not this, I'm not that. I'm not this, I'm not that. This and the that is all the things. American, Indian, woman, man, black, white. I'm not this, I'm not that. I am. Okay. I am. But that doesn't say much. I'm not this, I'm not that. The implication is I am, but I'm not this or that. I am, but what I am, then we're lost. As I said, we don't, unlike all things that are here today and gone tomorrow, we're observing the fact that things are here today and gone tomorrow. So we're not like them, and we can't be defined very well in relation to them other than by saying we're not like them. But that's not a very positive definition. It's a very negative definition. It's okay. It's kind of what we might call a tatastha lakshan of consciousness. What is its swarup lakshan? Lakshan means characteristic. Tatastha means it's marginal characteristic. I can define a thing by saying it's not this, it's not that, to an extent. But what is its swarup lakshan? Its actual positive content, primary characteristic. What is it? That's what this book is about. The potential of consciousness, its character in immortality. It's all about, after all that stuff. Therefore, Rupa Goswami says, vairagya and gyan, these two go together. Vairagya means detachment, and gyan means knowledge. So if you have knowledge, that in the real sense of the term, then you don't become attached to things that don't endure. That's a recipe for disappointment. And knowledge is something by which action is informed, and all of our actions are in pursuit of happiness, fulfillment. So if we understand that actions in relation to things that don't endure is a recipe for suffering, then detachment is the corresponding action, if you will, with knowledge. Do nothing. Avoid things. Close your eyes. Go to a quiet place. You don't hear anything that you might be distracted by, and so on and so forth. But Rupa Goswami says knowledge and detachment, these things are not angas of bhakti. They're not limbs of bhakti. They might be a little useful in the beginning. They have a little knowledge, a little detachment, be a little useful. So they say, we do emphasize it to some extent, because we're not in the same culture of Rupa Goswami when he wrote the book Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and it was common theme amongst all the talking heads of the time and the media and whatnot, or centuries past. In other words, it was the world view that you're not the body. I heard a discussion between a Christian, British Christian theologian interviewed about consciousness, and the interviewer said that so many things, right, in times gone by, we used to think of consciousness, or as we think of a soul and kind of consciousness, kind of in relation to that. But so many things we've learned since then that we didn't know, and so on. So how can you keep this old idea when so many new ideas have come that have shown that ideas of the past are weren't correct or something like that? And you respond, yeah, many things have changed. We've learned a lot of things, but we haven't learned very much about consciousness at all. It was a good reply. Next interview was, I watched these sometime back, was with Professor, what is his name? John Searle at Berkeley. Philosophy of mind. And he's a materialist, of course. And so he was asked about demonstrating, in due course, that consciousness is really just a function of the brain, and there's nothing but the physical. And he said, I think, give us a little time. We're getting close to that. And so the interviewer says, well, what do you think? He said, well, at the speed of science, the way it's going today, I'd say 1,000 years. And I'd had to chuckle because science is moving at a very rapid pace, obviously. It's, compared to the time of the scientific revolution and its birth and so forth. And he still thought he needed about 1,000 years, to be able to demonstrate this. So, we haven't learned too much about consciousness, and these books are very much about that and its prospect and so forth. And it picks up where this basic idea leaves off. Is it material, or is it ontologically different from the natural physical world and so forth? So the immortal, nectar-like, ecstatic character of consciousness in immortality. So it's a very, it's a lofty text, a deep text, plumbing very deeply the oceanic depths of the prospect of consciousness, the prospect of our own selves as a unit of consciousness in the subjective world. Now we're living as a unit of consciousness in relation to the subjective world and defining ourselves in relation to the things that we're attached to and so forth, and losing sight of the fact that the whole life is really about the subjective realm, as I said, all the values and whatnot, meaning all from there. So yoga is from moving into the direction of the subjective world, and this is a yoga, bhakti-yoga, that comes from deep within that world. The means of Chaitanya Dev is this Nam Sankirtan. This is the method to his madness, his ummada, his ecstasy. His ecstasy is the Maranaki Mahabhav, that Mahabhav Swarupani, that's ultimately Krishna trying to experience the ecstasy of Radha. And he's, of course, successful in the end. So the means to this madness is Nam Sankirtan, the chanting of the holy name of Krishna. And it's said to be exported from Golok. Golokar Pramodhan Harinam Sankirtan. To hear. So the method comes from there. In other words, we have a spiritual method to attain a spiritual goal. That makes sense. Anything short of a wholly spiritual method that purports to deliver a spiritual result should be questionable. We're not relying upon our physical prowess, neither on our intellectual prowess. This is a trans-rational practice. It's something that picks up, if you will, where reason leaves off and takes us beyond the limits of reason, which is kind of the upper rim of material existence. So from there to here. And in his book, Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami, he is drawing the teachings that are in this book from the deepest regions of that ecstatic realm of Krishna Lila, the Braja Lila, the love and intimacy, where love takes a form and a shape that it looks so different from that which it's born from, the womb of sacrifice, that it almost looks like Krishna and Radha, and they're like, what's that? It doesn't look like, I mean, sacrifice is so noble and high. When someone gives up lower for the higher cause and takes difficulty to do so, think not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. This kind of thing. Wow, we are inspired, like sacrifice, yes, and it's visible that something's been given up and it requires some pain. And so Krishna Lila is just full of enjoyment. Yes, gopis are giving up their families, but for what? For unmentionable things. It would appear on the surface. But love is of such a nature that it tends to hide itself. Nasta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata seva. If you want to understand the Bhagavad, you have to study it very carefully, every day. Nityam bhagavata seva. What's underneath this? It looks like one thing. It looks like calm, but it's actually praying. And this praying is born, in a sense, from the womb of sacrifice, but now it's grown up. So it has a different form, and it's playing itself out, and it looks like calm. But if we look underneath, we find Krishnendriya Pritivancha. It's all about serving and satisfying the senses of Krishna. So deep within this realm, in his effort to define or explain who is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami has written his book. And he says something to us, a verse I want to speak from, that gives us a reason for Radha, if you will, if you need one. Kind of gives us a reason. He says, Radha Krishna Pranay Vikutiladini Shakti Rasmad. Now you'll go on from there, but this is the first line of the verse that's pertinent to our discussion. Radha Krishna Pranay Vikutiladini Shakti Rasmad. Ekat Anuvapit Vipure Deham Vedo Vatoto. Chaitanya Kyam Pakatam. Adunatadvayam Chaikyamaptam Radha Bhava Duty Subalitam Nomi Krishna Sarupam. He's explaining that Krishna is one, eternally. But Krishna becomes two eternally, as Radha and Krishna. And the two again become one, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who accepts or is imbued with the complexion of Radha, although he's Krishna, who's dark in complexion, golden complexion. Radha Bhava Duty, her emotion, Bhava, and her duty, her heart and her hue. He accepts. Radha Bhava Duty Subalitam Nomi Krishna Sarupam. So it's a very strong statement. Actually, it comes from Sarup Damodar's diary. He was the secretary of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's no longer available in written form. But this verse is drawn from there. And the first line, as I say, is really relevant to our discussion. It's beautiful that we, of course, and appropriate that we speak about Radha in the context of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by which we can know all these things, through whom I should say we can know all these things, know something about them, and be encouraged to know about them by doing what's necessary to go there. So Radha Krishna Pranay. Radha Krishna Pranay Vikutiladini Shakti Rasmad. It says that Radha, Krishna is one, but his love transforms into the person of Radha, who is the embodiment of his Ladini Shakti, his the power of love and ecstasy. What does this mean to us? It means something. It's a doctrine of Shakti. It's really, devotees are very much as I mentioned this morning in our reading, Nana Tantra Vidhanena. In Kali Yuga, it is said about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Bhagavatam that the main text will come from the Tantra. It's a very feminine side of the texts. You got the Veda, it's very masculine. God is there, Bhagawan, and the Tantra is feminine. All the left and right hand Tantra, all the Shakti. So all of our procedures, our mantras, our procedures in the ritualist realm of ritual and worship, so it all come from the Tantra. And from Gotamiya Tantra, we had Gotamiya Tantra this morning, definition of Radha, different names of Radha, and so forth. So it's a doctrine that's it's interesting to note, because in Bengal you have the Shaktas and the Bhaktas, and they're in kind of a feud of sorts. But from our point of view, we are super Shaktas. In other words, the Shaktas in the ordinary sense are the worshippers of Durga, Kali, and they worship for material things and for liberation. And the Bhaktas, they worship Krishna for bhakti. But in our bhakti, of course, Chaitanya bhakti, then the bhakti of Radha is the example for us. And she is the Shakti Tattva, and we are the followers of Radha. So it's kind of a super Shakti doctrine. But anyway, Shakti is the emphasis. So what is the idea? Of course, it's rooted in the Upanishads. We have the idea, the statement, I should say, from Sri Tashvatara, Prasya Shakti Vividaya Vishrite, Brahman is possessed of Shaktis. And from the Taittiriya Bali, Ananda Bali, chapter about drawn upon by the Vrindavan Goswamis, Rasovai Sa, Brahman is rasa. Rasa means taste. And if you know Brahman as rasa, it goes on, then you will taste also. Tasting. Rasoham apsukam taya. Krishna says in Gita, I taste. So for tasting, the implication is there need to be two. For rasa, for Brahman to be rasa, we have to have some type of dyad, of two. Here the two are one, and the two are different. This verse of Srupa Damodar that Krishnadas is using in his book that I'm citing is the philosophical ground, if you will, that this Leela of Radha and Krishna is played out on. It's a verse that speaks to us about the doctrine, if you will, of the Chintya Veda Veda, the term coined by Jiva Goswami, inconceivable unity and diversity, oneness and difference, immanence and transcendence is the nature of being, nature of the absolute, and by extension, all being. It's a very interesting concept. But in this text of Chaitanya Charitamrita, this verse is one of two verses that speak about the internal reasons for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's descent. And this is a philosophical verse that gives us some ground to put a foot on, so to speak, get a foothold to step up from there into the next verse, which is so pregnant with bhava, with ecstasy. There we find the highest theological questions that have ever been asked in the world. And who's asking them? Well, God is asking them. You know, we have theological questions about the nature of God, whether God exists, or the nature of God from our side. Here, in this book, God is asking theological questions about the nature of his being and existence. He asks three questions in particular that he asks. And the fact that they're coming from his own mouth is very extraordinary. He's in somewhat of an existential crisis. So this is a very extraordinary theological idea. God in existential crisis what is it about me that makes her the way she is? Her is Radha, of course. So we'll get to that, but I want to make the point here that this is like a ground of our the canvas, as I often say, in which the art of this lila, the feeling, the bhava in lila is played out. And so it's appropriate where it comes in the text, the first of two verses describing the internal reasons for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's descent, which takes us to the very central point of the Rasa Lila. So the centralmost point of the deepest point of Krishna Lila in the Bhagavatam, there we find Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And we go deep into Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we find ourselves in Radha Krishna Lila. Which comes first? We will say, first the giver, then the gift. Therefore, we preface our discussion of Chaitanya, of Radha and Krishna, with some glorification of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the giver. But they're complementary. They're like, as I say, like two leelas, like a reversible jacket. You know, you've got a black jacket with gold cuffs, and you turn it around, it's a gold jacket with black cuffs. Krishna as the Vishayalambana, the object of love. Krishna putting himself in the position of the lover, as Radha, the vessel of love, and trying to understand himself from that perspective. Krishna goes into like an auto-psychoanalysis in the next verse about himself. So it's so lofty that it's good that we have this ground here to get a foothold on philosophically. That there's some reason to the rhyme and madness of the idea God is having an existential crisis. So here the verse says what? Radha Krishna Pranay Ladini Shakti Rasma. Radha is the transformation of Krishna's love. And the two are one and different. What does it mean? It means that Krishna has love. Just like, to give an example, we have in material speaking, we have mass and we have energy. So mass and energy, they are equal in proportion to one another. This is a little physics, right? So the equation between mass and energy is that they are of equal proportion. Mass and energy. And then you have also like resting mass and resting energy. When there's no movement from the point of view of the observer of a body or whatever a thing, a body, it's a system. Systems are composed of mass and energy, and they may move from the perspective of the observer. But when they're resting, the mass and energy, they equally complement one another. But when there's movement, the energy in a state of motion exceeds its measure in a state of rest. So, Krishna has Swarup Shakti. He's the source of all Shakti, so this Shakti, that Swarup Shakti is inherent in him. But when it comes outside of him, so to speak, and takes a shape, then it exceeds its measure when found within him. And that manifestation of energy, we probably use the term energy, and appropriately so. Krishna is kind of like a mass of consciousness, and mass has energy. All things that exist do something. They have some power by which they make themselves known, or they do something. It means mass has energy. Energy is by which things are done. Everything's accomplished, right? So this energy is inherent, or Shakti, to use the Sanskrit term, is inherent in the Shaktiman, the energetic. But its position is enhanced and more full when it manifests in apparent difference. An apparent difference. It's not really different because it's part of him, but it's manifesting before him, taking a shape before him. And this enhances the position of the Shakti, of the energy. Therefore, the Swarup Ananda, the Ananda, here we're referring to the Hladini Shakti, that Radha is the embodiment of the ecstasy, the love potency, the love Shakti of Krishna. It's inherent in him, but in that condition it's called Swarup Ananda. It's the Swarup, it's the Ananda of his Swarup. But when it manifests by way of transformation, and becomes and Krishna has now an object to repose his love in. That becomes Swarup Shakti Ananda. So the Ananda, the Hladini, Swarup Shakti Ananda, it exceeds in measure the Swarup Ananda of Krishna. So it gives pleasure to Krishna in such a way that when inherent or dormant, so to speak, within Krishna, lying in rest, it cannot. So the position of Radha is very significant then to the absolute, because it makes, as I say, and often his life go round. Just like energy has power and things happen, the mass systems move and whatever, do things because of energy, because of Shakti. So now we take it to in the realm of subjectivity, super subjectivity, in the realm of consciousness, a mass of consciousness, and it has energy. And now, because he's such a sankalpa, anything he wants happens. He wants to love. So, what is the Upanishadic statement? That Saicchita, the one becomes eko, bahu, sham. The one becomes many. We think about it often in relation to Mahavishnu. The one becomes many. Lokavat tulila kaivalyam, the world, it manifests because there are so many jivas. But here it applies to the supersubjective realm. The one becomes many. Eko bahu sham. One becomes many. And not, we say, well, many? Only one, Radha. No, as I said earlier. There's one Krishna, but thousands and millions of Radhas. Radha's expanding herself as every other gopi and into every heart of every devotee. In every devotee, there's a little bit of Radha. She's, again, Bhakti Devi, the queen of bhakti. Without Radha, there's no bhakta. There's no devotee. And there's no devotion. One Krishna and millions of ways within certain philosophical parameters to serve him and please him, satisfy him. And this flow, if you will, expansion of the Shakti, this is Radha. So just, I'm going to say to you, just as mass has energy and things that exist do something, and they do something by their energy and so forth, in the same way, there's a reason, if you will, for a Radha. There's a reason for Krishna, for God, and there's a reason for Radha. In this sense, there's not much of a reason, because what does it mean? These two, Radha and Krishna, they are one. Another way to speak about it is this: Krishna is the body and Radha is his soul. So you have the two. And his soul manifests before him. What a wonderful thing. And so the interrelation now between these two is a kind of a what we call love. So reality is this interplay of love, which, well, love knows no reason. So we wanted a reason, but we don't really have one, because reality exists for love. You have the theological or philosophical question: why is there something rather than nothing? We have our answer. We say, because there is love. That doesn't like what? But love that defies reason. So we say reality is love, and certainly is our reality. It's what we pursue, knowingly or unknowingly. We want to be loved, and And we have some capacity to love. As much as we exercise it, really, in the full sense of the term, then we feel the reciprocity that love is, involves. So here we have Krishna and Radha, the two. They're one and they're different at the same time. If they were entirely one, well, if they were entirely different, then there would be something that's different from God. We have a panentheistic worldview, metaphysical view. It just happens to be a very sexy thing these days. We've been at it for a long, long time. But the problems with classical theology in Christianity, for example, in Western thought, where God is different from the world, you've got to keep him different because the world's bad and God's good. And you got to make sure he's not tainted by the badness of the world. Its problems, its temporality, its evil, and so on. Separate them out. This is, of course, it's problematic. It's, in one sense, it gave birth to the environmental crisis that we experience today, centuries ago, and it's starting to be a problem for a number of thoughtful Christian theologians in that it's not working that well, given various scientific findings as to the nature of matter and how it works and so forth. So there's quite a group now of Christian theologians who are advocating a panentheistic perspective on Christianity. You have on one hand, you have theism, classical theism. There's God over here, and then there's the world over here. On the other end of the spectrum, you've got pantheism, which is popular in some forms of in the East. And God is the world. God is the world, or God's over here and the world's here. So when you have God over here and the world here, you've got God as a tangible entity. But you've got the world as separate, and it brings up problems. How does something that's completely different from the world interact with the world? Have causal influence, efficacy, and so forth. It's a big problem. On the other side, if God is the world, then where did he go? I mean, okay, it's kind of vague, and it's and you lose the person of the Godhood, the Godhead. So there's a trade-off, right? If you have pantheism, you lose the person of the God, but your world starts to have more meaning and value. You have God as a person different from the world has no value. Starts to lose its value, but you've got the person, a lovable person, hopefully. But in panentheism, then you have the best of both. Not pantheism, but panentheism. So you have God is the world, and God is at the same time more than the world. Panentheism. Pan, N is a small word, but it's a big thing. God not is the world, but in the world. He's in it and beyond it at the same time. And this is, of course, a modern Western term, but it does speak to us, give us a kind of a Western hook or something to grab onto that helps explain in Western language, philosophical, theological language, what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's doctrine is about. And it's very much about the fact that there's Radha and Krishna. So the world is not in the God and God's power, if you will, are not completely different. Otherwise, you have some competitor with God, and neither are they entirely one, because they're entirely one. There's nothing to talk about power and powerful. There's nothing to be said about it. But there is something to be said about it. There is something to be said about the fact that fire has heat and light, and it has sparks and smoke. Worlds like smoke. How does the fire move the smoke? Well, smoke comes out of fire. It just happens. It kind of moves in relation to fire and kind of independent. Then there are sparks that come out of the fire. So in this example, of course, smoke is the Maya, Shakti. Sparks are ourselves. We have light. We can't do much unto ourselves, so we can't cook with a spark or get warm. But it's light. And then you have heat and light. Heat and light is an energy also of the fire. But it's so close to the fire, it's almost hard to think of it separately, but it is. This is how Radha is in the Swarup Shakti, is one with the fire and different. Smoke is more different than one. But it's one because you can't have smoke without fire. It's entirely dependent upon the fire. Similarly with the sparks. They're completely dependent on the fire. In that sense, they're one, and they're also one because they have kind of like, to a minute degree, the same quality. You can get a little burn from that if you touch the spark. A little light in the night. It'll look like something. Give a black contrast. Then you have heat and light, and we think, well, what is fire without heat and light? You could say, what is fire without sparks, without smoke? I mean, you could kind of go with that, but without heat and light, there's fire. So Radha is like this. Actually, this Swarup Shakti of its Samvit and Hladini are like the heat and light. The light is the Samvit. Light means knowing. Samvit, so knowing. And Hladini means feeling. Bliss, love, heat is feeling. So the fire has light and heat. This is Krishna's Swarup Shakti. We're focusing on the heat here. This is Radha, Hladini Shakti. But Hladini Shakti means also, she's Shakti. What did we hear this morning? Shaktiman, what is the term he used? And Shakti? Anyway, Paramo or Supreme. So the fountainhead of all avatars and the fountainhead of all Shakti manifestations. So all aspects of Shakti within Radha, we just emphasize the Hladini Shakti because this loving, knowing and being kind of have their fullest meaning and in relation to loving. In other words, the nature of your existence and your knowledge is thought to be most improved. If you have a loving existence, in love, it doesn't matter where you live. You could live in, as I say, in a hollow of a redwood, and it looks meager, but it's big because it's a loving one. And the knowing is big there. You don't even have to know. There's so much going on, but you don't have to know about it. So how much do you know then? When you love, you don't have to know about so many things. So there's knowing. You see, So a loving existence is the biggest existence. Vrindavan looks small, like a little village, but it's big. Big because of its affection. And and they know everything there. They know everything? All they do is take care of cows. They're like uneducated people. You saying they know everything? Yeah, they know everything. Because what they're doing is service. And it's illuminating. It is the end of knowing. And we know that they know because we see that they're not interested in anything else. Imagine if Krishna's guru in Dwarka came to you and started giving a course on the scriptures. You think, wow, man, it's a good class. I'm interested. Well, when Uddhava came to Vrindavan to school the gopis in philosophy, they like that. Wow. We have no ear for this, no interest in this. You're boring us to death. And he's smart, so he thought, what they know, that's something extraordinary. What they know, Shruti said that he walked around for 2 months in kind of a daze, reading with the gopis in Vrindavan, just kind of singing poetry. Shruti, it's beyond the Shruti. Beyond the Upanishads. What is this place? What is Vrindavan? Vrindavaneshwari, Radhe, ki jai. Her love. So, I give some idea that there's a necessity for philosophical necessity. And also this idea that there's the absolute is this loving union between power and the powerful, the powerful Krishna and the power Radha, and the loving union between them. This it's a good kind of, as I think, reason for why something exists. For love, it exists for love. There is something because of love, and it also helps to explain why we exist and why the world exists. We're talking about the super subjective world, and and then there's this world, and then our place in it. Because the full face of love, of course, requires compassion, and so here we are. We're in need of compassion, and so there's a world, and it's a side, lower end of love. It's big from our perspective, obviously. So in this way, we have some philosophical ground to make our cry, our celebratory cry. What is it? Jai Radhe. This is the Gaudiya theme. Jai Radhe, Jai Radhe. Victory to Radha. She is making Brahman, who is everywhere and can't move, as I often say, because if you're everywhere, there's nowhere to go. He's omnipresent and omniscient. He's everywhere and he knows everything. So he's really doubly hindered. He's everywhere, so he can't go anywhere. That sounds boring. And you know, it's the journey. It's exciting, isn't it? And you think, I'm going to go to India. We're going to go. You know, pack it up. We're going to get on a plane. We're going to get, and you get there, and it's okay too. Okay, I'm going to go back. Okay. So, so he can't go anywhere, and he knows everything. So even if he could go anywhere, he already knows where he's going to go. So it's a problem. I already know what's going to happen. Takes the impetus out of doing anything. So he's doubly hindered, this Brahman, by knowing it, even though we may think knowing everything, that'd be great. Being everywhere at once, that would be great. For Brahman, it's a problem. But he who is everywhere and knows everything can't move, starts to move by the influence. In Brahman, you see, rasa is unmanifest. Swarup Shakti is dormant. And the more we move up the theological ladder towards Narayan's avatars, Ram, and ultimately Krishna, this Shakti, Bhakti, is the constitute of Krishna Swarup Shakti, is more active, more manifest. Before we get to the Braj Leela, there's no sleeping. There's no sleeping. We're constantly busy, right? Taking care of cows, and when the cows go to sleep, meet with Krishna in the night when nobody else can see. And everybody else is dreaming. I hope Radha meets with Krishna. If they're not, I wish they would. It's not possible. She can't marry him for various reasons. His astrological chart says when he gets to be about 11 or 12, he's going to leave the Braj and become a metropolitan prince. So we can't marry the girls to him. But who else would he marry? We dream about it. In Vatsalya Rasa, they dream about it. Oh, that my son, my daughter, the king's daughter, Vrishabhanu Maharaj, the king Nanda Maharaj's son. This is how they think. Just like village people, they think, who's he going to marry? Who's she going to marry? Let's bring them together, and that's matchmaking type of thing. This is the Grami Katha of village talk, gossip of Vrindavan. This gossip of Vrindavan. Rana, I think she was with Krishna. No, it couldn't be. She's a good girl. No. This Grami Katha, this is so much more pleasing to Krishna than the Upanishads. Tattvamasi, Brahmasmi, Neti Neti, Shrottamapi Upanishadam, Dure Harikatamrita. Mahaprabhu said, oh, the sounds of the Upanishad, Dure Harikatam, they're very far from where you can arrive at with Harikatha. Harikatha, Kampashlu Pulakadaya. All these transformations of ecstasy. We talk about Astasakti Vikar. You study Bhakti-yoga, you see all the examples of this. They're all occurring in the Swarup, in the spiritual body of the devotee, in the context of Leela. It's a world of ecstasy, a whole realm of ecstasy. Again, it's Chaitanya Charitamrita. And we have a potential to enter there. The immortal character in ecstasy of consciousness. We're a unit of that. We have a prospect. It's come to us through Chaitanya Vaishnavism, this prospect. Hang on. So there, this village talk, this is like nectar to Krishna's ears, and to the Rasika devotees. Somebody comes to talk about the Upanishad. Nobody's going to show up for that class. Just go to the village and preach, Nobody shows up. Nobody comes. There's just uneducated people. What they're talking about. Coward boy trying to arrange secretly for Krishna to meet with Radha. Dreaming about it. But Sali Rasa says it's the dream. Nanda Maharaj wants his son to marry Radha. Rishabhanu Maharaj wants his daughter to marry Krishna. But it's not possible. But it's going on, and everybody knows about it, but nobody, nobody can talk about it. It's a very charming, beautiful. This is Paraki, a very beautiful affair, very secret. Even within the Braj, the Braj place is a secret. Bhaje Sweta Dvipam Tamam Golokam Idiyam, Brahma said. This is a very, very rare. Few people know about this place, Swetadvip. And within Swetadvip, this is a secret. The Param Purusha, Krishna, Param Brahman, he is known as a dancer. Nietzsche said if there was a God, he'd be a dancer. He's the dancer, Krishna. But his guru in dancing, Shishu Guru Nata, Radhikar Premera Unmata. My teacher in Nata, in art, in dance, in drama, where rasas come from, where you can, in dance, in drama, in arts, in poetry, you can be transported beyond where you are and enter into the emotions that's what the drama is about, right? To bring out different feeling and emotion. If it's really good, you fell in love with her yourself or him, or you were there fighting, and it was almost you were gonna die, and you're not in the seat in the movie anymore. You're there. It has this taking beyond the limits of your present limiting existence. This idea of rasa. So to hear that, to be transported there. Of course, it's a yoga system, so it's not just listening to poetry, right? That's the central part of it, right? To hear all these things. So there, this in this realm, where Krishna is the Parama Purusha, the Supreme Brahman, and he is, well, in a beautiful form, and he's human-like, and he's a dancer, but he says, Ami Shishu Gurunata. I am actually the Shishya. I'm the disciple. Her dancing is my teacher, is my guru. She's my teacher in the arts, in music and song. She is really the kirtan of Krishna. She is really, Radha is the kirtan of Krishna. She's Radha Krishna Pranay, Bhikati Ladini Shakratma, the transformation. And then she's only singing about him. There he is, singing about himself in the form of Radha, glorifying him in every way. From her, singing, dancing. This is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is, in kirtan. It's, again, as we said earlier, this is its source, this is its genesis. It comes from this realm. And it plays out in the Gaur-lila, Chaitanya Lila, in a particular way. Golokeru Premodan Harinam Sankirtan. Radhikar Premera Unmata. Her love drives me mad. This is my position. So Vrindavan Ishwari, she's the Ishwari, feminine, of Vrindavan. She's in charge there. The supreme position of bhakti. This is the idea. By which not only is Maya dispelled, but Krishna himself is overwhelmed. And indeed, Krishna is God overwhelmed. That's what the Krishna means. God overwhelmed by bhakti to the fullest measure, and therefore he is just like a son. If the bhakti is vatsalya bhakti, sakyarasa, like a friend, like a lover, and all the human characteristics manifest in him fully. All this, all happening to Brahman by the power of bhakti that Radha is the full face of. So she's important, important and beautiful, and so beautiful that she takes always. We're saying something that she's always hiding from, right? She never comes out and says, "I'm the Shakti." That's not her nature like that. She'd be a little pushy with Krishna at times. It's appropriate. He likes that. When in the parent mood of jealousy and so forth, which is part of spicing up the whole rasa with competitors and so forth and so on. But she is in the background, right? She wants Krishna's in the front. Krishna Janmashtami, everybody celebrates, right? Oh, only Hindus, everybody, Krishna Janmashtami. And so on. Right? But who celebrates Radhastami? And you know what? If you don't celebrate Radhastami, you haven't celebrated Janmashtami. That's a fact. Yes. This is the secret of the devotees. Without celebrating Radhastami, Janmashtami is not perfectly completed. It's 2 weeks after 8 days of the waning moon, Krishna appears. 8 days into the waxing moon, 2 weeks later, this is the appearance of Radha. And she appears, as I said the other day, on the day in Krishna's astrological chart. It's the most auspicious day in his chart. Oh, the story of her appearance. I was going to tell a story, but we've gone too far. There's so many nice stories from the Puranas. I want to tell one of Rupa Goswami's about mountains, daughters of mountains. And maybe we'll get together in the evening. Someone who may still be here. Discuss some of those beautiful videos. Shri Radhastami ki jai, Mahamudra Titi ki jai, Shri Radha Govinda ki jai, Gauranga Mahaprabhu ki jai, Shri Gauratananda ki jai, Gaur Vaishnava Guru Parampara ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premanande.
Shri Bhaktivedanta Tripurari Maharaj ki jai.
So now what's the time? 10, 12?
12:10.
Okay. We have Artik and Mahaprasad. Sure. Let's see.
Having trouble.